at some point in the life of every church, church has got to figure out, are we more focused on the people that we have in our church, or are we more focused on those that are outside of our church? And they have to usually figure this out because people inside the church are saying, why do we care so much about the community or the poor or refugees when we already have all these people here? Why aren't we taking care of the needs of everyone here? Why aren't we making sure that everybody in here has what they need? And this is a hard question, right? Because the truth is, even though we come to know Jesus, it doesn't mean that suddenly all our needs are met, right? And I can understand how people in the life of our church think, man, we have so much stuff that we need and that is still not quite working in the way that our lives work and the way our money works and our marriages work and our parenting. And the truth is, we could just invest all of our time in engaging the needs of folks that are already in the life of our church. But when we look at the life of Jesus and we consider the ministry of Jesus and what it means to be in the church, we have to notice that Jesus was ruthlessly focused on those who were furthest away from God. Now, you can make a really strong argument the reason why Jesus was crucified was because he wouldn't pay attention to the needs and the desires of the religious people and the religious leaders of his day. He kept finding himself surrounded by the most broken people of the culture who were furthest from God. And just a quick read through the Gospels shows you that over and over and over again in the Gospels, the greatest resistance and arguing that Jesus has is around the fact that he won't pay attention to the Pharisees and the followers of the Pharisees, which were sort of the head religious teachers of the day. And he's in constant conflict with them about the fact that he's hanging out with the wrong people doing the wrong things. Luke chapter 15 is one chapter where Jesus takes this head on. He doesn't ignore it anymore. He doesn't just sort of do what he's going to do. He takes on the Pharisees and says, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Luke 15, verse 1 says this, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So the religious people were standing around saying, why is this guy hanging out with all the bad guys when he could be hanging out with us? When he should be noticing that we're his team. He could be having meals with us. He could be teaching us. Why is he with these people? And you can understand, I can understand this place. Like, why wouldn't Jesus focus on them? And so Jesus then tells 3 stories in a row to describe why he's doing what he's doing and how he wants to call those who already know God to be focused ruthlessly on those who don't. So maybe you've heard these stories before. They're pretty well known. At least the third one's really well known. It's the parable of the lost sheep. It's the parable of the lost coin. It's the parable of the lost son. Sometimes it's called the story of the prodigal son. And it's in these stories that we get to catch Jesus' heart, and frankly, it pushes us and makes us consider, are we up to what Jesus is up to? So the first story, is the parable of the lost sheep. It's a really simple story. He says, to a group of people, as the Pharisees are standing there pushing him, remember that's the context. He says, to a group of farmers, if you have 100 sheep and one of them runs away, don't you leave the 99 and go get the one? And when you come back carrying that one, don't you call your friends together and say, hey, rejoice with me. I found the lost sheep. And in doing this, Jesus is speaking specifically to his audience. These are shepherds standing around. And you can imagine this group of shepherds kind of nodding in agreement. Yeah, like, of course, you leave the 99 and you go after the one, because when Jesus refers to us as sheep, he's not giving us a compliment. I don't know if you've ever been around sheep. They're not bright. Sheep actually are exceptionally stupid. They carry the hook. Shepherds, the pictures with the kind of the hook staff. You know why they had that? So they could grab them by the neck and pull them. They carry rocks so that they could take in a sling so they could get rid of predators. Maybe a wolf would come. But they would use a rock. If one of the sheep got out of line, they would throw a rock at the sheep, try to hit the sheep, and it would freak them out, and they'd run right back to the rest. They're not bright animals. They can't really see that far out in front of themselves. If they're left alone, they die. So Jesus says, listen, surely you know this is the way it works. When one is lost, the shepherd stops everything and goes after that one. I want you to think about this. Jesus is saying effectively that one is more valuable in that moment than the 99. It's more important. And he literally says it that way. He says, isn't there rejoicing over that one that comes back? So now he changes his target. At first he was just talking to farmers. Now he starts to talk to women, specifically single ladies with the next story. He says it's a parable of the lost coin. He says, you have 10 coins, you lose one of the coins. And he's speaking specifically to single women because he says, wouldn't that woman stop and search the whole house to find that one coin? And then if she finds the one coin, she calls together her friends and says, rejoice with me, I lost my coin, but now I found it. And some of this gets lost in the context. Here's the basic context. If you were a single woman in Jesus' day, you would wear a necklace of 10 coins. And the necklace of 10 coins was a way of saying to anyone nearby, I'm available. And you can have all this and the coins, right? It was a way of saying, I come from a family of means and I'm available. Now, can you imagine if you go out with 9 coins? What single lady leaves her house not looking right when Mr. Right could be right around the corner, right? Like he's right there and you didn't get your hair right. You got like a ketchup stain on your shirt or something, right? Like she's saying, I can't do it, we got to find this coin. In this way, this is really important, Jesus is describing the value of the coin. See, too often people will say, we can't refer to people as lost, because lost is opposed to found. I've even seen bumper stickers that say, not all who wander are lost. And, usually has a whole bunch of religious symbols on it, as though you're saying, hey, I'm not lost. I'm doing what I want to do. Jesus is not comparing lostness to foundness, as though found people are somehow special and lost people are really messed up. He's saying something different. He's saying that if you're lost, you're valuable. When Danielle and I, my wife and I, got engaged, I worked for years to save enough money to buy her an engagement ring. So I got her this ring. It was like all the money I had in the world. And I'll never forget, a couple weeks before our wedding, she calls me up and says, bad news, I can't find the ring. And I remember thinking, okay, and I'm thinking, I can't buy her another ring. So, well, when's the last time you had it? And I remember going over and we're looking all around the sink. We took one of the sinks apart, where I'm crawling on my hands and knees in the carpet, only trying to find it and fall somewhere. Why do we do that? Because it's valuable. When Jesus is describing lostness, he's describing value. When we lost that ring, everything stopped until it was found again. Like right now, I wonder for you, do you know where your high school diploma is? Do you have a high school diploma? Do you know where it is? Most people have one. You might not know where it is. Does that mean it's lost? No, not necessarily. It's just you don't care. It's in a box somewhere. If you had to find it, you could find it. You didn't lose it. When he describes lostness, he's saying this is valuable. And listen, here's the point he's making. When there's people that are far from Jesus, we don't just do business as usual as the church. Everything stops because these people that are far from God are so valuable to God. They're so valuable. I'm aware of this every time I speak in any audience, on a Sunday or elsewhere. I'm aware that like the eyes of God are on people that are far from Him in a way that He might not be on the rest of us. And if that offends you, I get it. I get it. We all want to feel like we're the most important thing, but God says, no, don't you understand? They're so valuable. Jesus is saying, Pharisees, don't you understand? These people are so valuable to God. You're busy just managing other church people. I mean, there's these people that are lost. They have to be found. And the last story, of course, is probably the most famous one, the story of the lost son or the prodigal son. And if you don't know the story, I'm not going to go into tons of detail, but it follows the theme. We have two sons, an older son, a younger son. The younger son says to his dad, you know, can I just have my inheritance now? I don't want to wait. Now, just the very beginning of the story is crazy. Like, if you did this in any kind of Middle Eastern context, even today, if you tell this story, I remember telling this story in Syria one time, the story of the lost son, and I told this part of the story, and the younger son came and said, give me my share in the inheritance. And everyone listening went, oh, because it's a coup. The older son, of course, is supposed to get the inheritance. And then the younger son. But the younger son jumps the whole process, says, give me my inheritance now. He's effectively saying, hey, Dad, I don't want to wait for you to die. Can I just have my money now? It's as though saying, I wish you were dead. I don't really care. Now listen, I have two girls. If either of my girls came to me and said, you know, I kind of wish you were dead. You're not dead, though. Can I have my money now? I probably would say something like, well, you're going to wish you were dead here in a minute. Who do you think you are to ask for your inheritance now? I'll tell you one thing I wouldn't do. I wouldn't give them the money. And here's why this story is so crazy. The father, who stands as God in the story, gives the younger son his inheritance. I mean, how crazy is this story? Gives it to him knowing that what happens next is probably going to happen. The younger son, it says, goes off and squanders it all in wild living. You know, some kind of hip-hop video, you know, like gambling and prostitutes we hear later. Loses all the money. And what we learn in this story is exactly what God is like. God is so gracious. He gives graciously and abundantly. You know, He says to us, if you don't want to walk with me, you don't have to. You can do what you want to do. It's amazing how kind and generous God is. Even when He knows we're going to squander it, He just gives generously. He trusts us with our own life, our own gifts, our own money, when really it's His to begin with. Well, anyway, he goes out and he blows all his money. And then it says it gets worse than that after he loses all his money. A famine hits the land, which happens in every prodigal's life I've ever known. It's not just what they can control, it's that things can go wrong around them. Suddenly they're sick, somebody gets pregnant, you lose a job. It's something that happens to you that you didn't expect. And that happens to him. There's a famine that hits the land. So he hires himself out to take care of pigs. Good Jewish boy caring for pigs of a foreigner in a foreign land. Ugh. And it says, not only is he taking care of the pigs, one day he's staring at the food, and he starts thinking to himself, man, if I could just eat some of this pig food. I mean, think about how nuts this is. It's not just that he lost all his money. It's not just that there's been a famine. It's not just that he's working with pigs. Now he wants to eat pig food. And it says something crazy happens. It says that he comes to his senses. And he thinks to himself, I should just go home. I mean, my father has hired men who eat better than this. What am I doing? I should just go home. And so he starts to prepare a speech. And he says, the speech in his mind is, Father, I've sinned against heaven, I've sinned against you, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Can you just make me like one of your hired men? And as he's walking home, practicing his speech, He says he looks up and he sees his father running at him. His father runs up and wraps his arms around him. It says he kisses his face. He shouts to his servants, bring a robe, get a ring, put it on his finger, put new sandals on his feet. Because this son of mine who is dead is now alive. You know what's nuts? Is that son practices his speech anyway. He tries to tell him, Father, I've sinned against heaven, I've sinned against you. And his dad just interrupts him, says, no, we're going to start a party. And it's in the same way Jesus is saying, this is what the Father is like for those who have the courage in the midst of all their mess to come toward God. Of course, the story doesn't end there. The story ends with the older son who's in the field working. And you can just imagine him, because that's what he does. He works. I do the right thing. I'm the good boy. And he hears a celebration. And so he grabs one of the servants. He says, what's the party going on down there by the house? And he says, oh, you didn't hear. Your brother is home again. And you'd think the son, the older son, would run to the house, right, and celebrate? No. It says he stands outside and keeps working. His dad has to come outside of the party and grab the son and say, son, did you hear? Your brother is home. He says, well, I wanted to throw a party. You wouldn't even give me a goat. You killed the fattened calf for him. I've been here serving and toiling all along, and you throw a party for him, who squandered all his wealth with prostitutes and gambling and who knows what? I've been here being faithful the whole time, and I don't get anything, and he gets a celebration. Boy, it sounds a lot like church people to me. So we're going to celebrate that somebody comes to Christ. We're going to spend our money to engage people that are far from Jesus. What about us? We're here. We're serving faithfully. We're praying. We're giving. And of course, what does the Father say? The Father says, but son, your brother, he was dead, but now he's alive. We had to celebrate. The story ends. And it's as though Jesus puts a question to the Pharisees. It's as though he's just saying, will you join the party? Will you join in engaging those that are far away? And I think that's the question before everyone who finds himself in the life of a church. Will you join the ministry of Jesus to reach towards those who are far away? Or will you stand outside and say, I'm frustrated. What about me? What about us? What about my needs? Or do you join Jesus in reaching? One last illustration. I want you to imagine we're at a campfire. A whole group of us, we're all at a campfire. And all of a sudden I realize one of my daughters has wandered away. And I can't find her. And it's getting dark. And so I stand up in the light of the campfire and say, listen, everybody, Sophia's gone. She's missing. She's wandered off down one of these trails. If we all hurry up, I bet we can break off into twos and threes. We could go find her. There's a picture I circulated. Look at it. She's wearing a pink jacket. If we all break up, we can go. And I grab two people and I go running off into the dark looking for my daughter. And everybody's just kind of frozen, like, should we pair off? I don't know what to do. And somebody raised their hand and says, you know what? I think it's crazy for us to just go wandering off in the dark. I'm somebody who's studied what it must feel like to be lost. And I'd like to do a little class on, what does it feel like to be lost? The psychology of a lost child. People are like, okay, that'd be great. And he starts to teach his class. Someone else stands up and says, I'd like to sing a song about what's it like to be found, so that maybe it'll draw in this lost girl. She'll hear the song and want to come. And people go, yeah, let's sing songs about being found. And then someone else says, I don't think we can really reach out to other people if we aren't really connected. We should probably have a barbecue. Let's roast some marshmallows. Let's hear each other's stories, because, how could we really be a good team if we aren't super connected together? I just want you to imagine that while everybody's singing songs and roasting marshmallows and doing classes, I found my daughter. I started to walk back toward that campfire. If I saw people just singing songs and hanging out, trying to be connected when my daughter was lost, you'd be lucky if I just kept on walking. If we want to be people that are engaged in the movement, the presence, and the power of the Holy Spirit, we have to be focused and dedicated on the lost. Or we missed it. Because God is crystal clear. He is pursuing those who are furthest away. He is on a mission. He invites those who come into life with him to join him. Have you joined the search party? Are you with God? Have you caught his heart for those who are far away? Because we want to be a people that do that. We have to join God in mission. Or else we're just a church, we're just like a bunch of golden retrievers in a box licking each other, puppies licking each other in a box. You ever been in that church, like where it just feels like everybody's like so ingrained and super connected, it just gets weird? It feels a little like you're walking into a room where two people are making out. You're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come in. That's how so many churches can feel, so ingrown and self-connected, and it's gross. Healthy humans engage in the lives of others, and specifically healthy believers join Jesus in engaging those who are furthest away.